All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless Dave here, talking real music in real time for a few real people out there, just like you and just like me. So I am still recovering from a very nasty stomach bug I had yesterday, and it's still kind of hanging around a little bit. I hate not doing videos, so here I am, and I've got an interesting topic. It has to do with Steve Perry. Steve Perry speaks. And when Steve Perry talks, people listen, right? It's like E.F. Hutton, E.F. Perry. People want to know what Steve has to say. Before I talk about Steve talking, here is Landfall. In fact, if you like Steve Perry, you might like Landfall. My buddy Jeff Scott Soto, who used to be the lead singer of Journey for 11 months. All right. I'm trying JSS. I'm trying to keep them informed. You had a 11-month career in Journey. Anyway, he told me, hey, this guy sounds a lot like the Brazilian version of Steve Perry. So I went and I listened and I was fairly impressed. I mean, this guy is good. Not only is he good, right? But he's a nice person. I like nice people. There he is, kind of in that black V-neck thing there. The ladies tend to like Guy Oliver. That's his name. They tend to dig Guy. And this band sounds a bit like Journey and Mr. Big and a couple of other things, but really decent album. It's called Elevate. Go listen to it. You want some different music to listen to, check it out. All right. So Steve Perry talks, E.F. Hutton. And when E.F. Hutton talks, people have to listen to it. He's over on Instagram. I don't spend any time on Facebook, Instagram. I have accounts. They're basically like dead accounts. I just have them so I can check this stuff out. It takes me a while to log into this. This was kind of an interesting thing this morning, trying to figure this out to get back into it. But this is Steve Perry talking about Ross Valory's new solo album. And right out of the box, he says here, Ross Valory released his solo record today. He, along with Steve Smith, were the backbone driving rhythm section of Journey. Without them, it would have not been possible. Check out his record. Sincerely, Steve Perry. Now, a couple of things to note. He doesn't say, wow, this is a great album. Listen to it from start to finish. He just says, check his record out, which is interesting. And he says, and who would, I don't know, I would have just put like, hey, greetings from Uncle Steve or something like that. Sincerely, Steve Perry. Did someone else write this for him? I don't know. Ross Valory responds and says, thank you, Steve. So good little plug for the new Ross Valory album, which is interesting. I had a few patrons say to me, what is this? And I say, it's going to be kind of a mishmash of every type of music because Ross is a bass player. And bass players, they tend to fit with anybody, right? It's not like he's composing guitar riffs or I don't know. I mean, it's interesting, right? Not too sure about this imagery here. Who knows what this is? Is this like a super buff version of Ross? See the hair there? A prehistoric Ross? I don't know. What are these things too floating around? So I think I see a keyboard here. I'm getting really caught up in this album cover. Ross Valory, all of the above. All right. That's what this music is. It's all of the above. So I find a bit of irony here, like I often do when I've seen a change because so much time has gone on. I haven't seen a change in relationships when it comes to, say, John Cain or Neil Sean. Steve Perry doesn't seem to want to acknowledge those guys, right? But he will certainly talk about Ross Valory, who he fired back in the mid-'80s and replaced that. In fact, it was Steve and Ross. And I mentioned this, and yeah, I think in the VH1 documentary, he says something. Steve says, well, if I had the chance to do it again, would I do it? He goes, I don't, maybe not, but he had to have that different sound. And if you look at the credits on Raised on Radio, it really looks like a Steve Perry solo album with John and Neil there. That's what it looks like. And those guys said, hey, Steve, you want control of this? You got it. We want you in the band. We want to keep this franchise going. So they gave Steve whatever he wanted. And it's a good, and nobody's going to say it's not a good album. It's a good album, but to me, based on Journey's prior uh, sound and just where they were going musically, this was more of a Steve Perry solo record. And then you got a little bit more. Trial by Fire was kind of a mixture of the new Journey and the old Journey. And of course, you got the original Escape lineup back on Trial by Fire. And from what I understand, that was Neil Schon who insisted that Steve come back and Ross come back to have that Escape lineup, which people loved. So anyway, this also, if you're, paying attention to every little detail, it seems like Steve Perry is on much better terms with Ross and Steve. And remember that coup attempt that everybody settled out of court and everybody got something out of the deal. That looks far more authentic and real. I remember people were saying how crazy and unhinged Neil Schon was at the time. I really do believe there was a plan in place to take that band away from Neil. And I think cooler heads eventually prevailed, but then lawsuits happened. You couldn't just attempt to do that and just get away with it. And Steve Perry has denied being part of that, but initially it was said that he was part of that to get control away from Neil. And even recently, where Neil Schon was talking about Don't Stop Believing, Steve Perry was out there. They're both out there talking about how great it was. Steve Perry thanked his parents, and Neil Schon came back with, "Hey, we're out here plugging away every year, keeping this music out there, and that is a big deal. You're exposing hundreds of thousands of people each year to these songs, and people, they want to hear this song. It's on. I'm talking about Don't Stop Believing. It's on their bucket list." And he says, "How about, almost like saying, how about a little acknowledgement of the fact that we've kept this band going?" And it's John and himself. John didn't really respond to any of that, but again, Steve thanking his parents, which Neil was like, "Okay, fine, Steve, God bless you." But so there's a difference in relationships. For whatever reason, Perry has definitely reconciled with Ross and with Steve Smith, and that's fine. That's fine. It's just interesting, and it's this video. I mean, this is my best attempt after being really sick yesterday to come up with something that's somewhat interesting. But should you go listen to the new Ross Valory album? Sure. It really is all of the above. Some of this imagery is a little bit wacky, and I don't know. It's just even this stuff. But this kind of looks very Ross Valory-ish, right? The guy I think is supposed to be a representation of Ross. He's got really chiseled, rock hard, chiseled abs there. So yeah, I think that's legitimate, right? So I'm sorry, folks. It still hurts from yesterday. There's pain. There's all kinds of pain. So Steve Perry thanks Ross Valory, right? Says, "Ross, you're the best, man. After I fired you." Well, he doesn't thank him, but he acknowledges him. He doesn't acknowledge Jonathan Cain when John releases albums. He doesn't acknowledge Neil Schon when he puts out albums. He doesn't acknowledge those guys at all, which is weird. And they're keeping the lights on. They're keeping the business open, and they're selling lots of tickets. And Steve gets some money from that, right? Is he going to get any money? Is Steve Perry getting money from the Ross Valory album, which is probably going to sell like 3,000 copies or something like that? I mean, it may do better than that, but my point is, no, he's not going to get money from that. But he does get money when Journey goes out on tour. So he should be very thankful. He should be praising Neil and John and Arnell and Dean Castronovo, who really, to be honest with you, Steve Smith is a great drummer, but a different kind of drummer. Dean Castronovo, a brilliant rock and roll drummer, like straight up people will give him crap and say, you're just a banger. You just hit drums really hard. And no, I mean, he can pretty much imitate all of the things that Journey on the drums has done throughout the years, whether he's trying to be Ainsley Dunbar or Steve Smith. I think he does it all. And not only that, but he sings while playing drums. So that's talent. And if you want to acknowledge that, Steve Perry, that'd be cool. I mean, Dean is amazing on vocals. And I think people know that. He's not Steve Perry. Nobody is Steve Perry, just for clarification. But that's kind of the whole point, that, it's good that this is still going on, and that Neil Sean and John Kane have kept the lights on. So good for them. And yes, it's nice to be acknowledged, right? Good job, Ross Valory. You might sell some albums, because tell you what, Team Steve Perry, and Steve doesn't talk that much. When Steve talks, people listen. He is the E.F. Hutton of rock stars these days. Here's Landfall, Elevate. Check it out, please. It's good stuff. Bit like Journey, bit like Mr. Big. Thanks to everybody who are supporting this channel. Again, this isn't my best video. I am really under the weather still, but I'm trying to push some content out there so people know that I'm still doing this and I haven't quit. So thanks to everyone. God bless, and I will talk to you soon.